Erev Tov covering. I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live. President Trump getting ready to make his trip abroad. Saudi Arabia, Israel, Rome, and of course a couple of other places there. He will be going on this trip, ending up at the G7 summit there. Israeli News Live hopes to be able to catch him somewhere along the way on this journey here. Bring some more news to you there from his trip abroad, especially once he gets closer to Europe here. Also, I believe he'll be coming to Germany as well. But anyway, the first three stops, we're going to look at that in the news tonight because we have really uncovered some very interesting news that has been brought out by other news agencies, but also some things that we have known about sometime and we have reported here on Israeli News Live for well, it's been several years now that we've reported one of the news issues in particular that we're going to be sharing tonight. Let's get right into the broadcast. So starting with the independent.co.uk, where they speak about Donald Trump to announce a $350 billion arms deal with Saudi Arabia, one of the largest in history, as it states there. And of course, Saudi Arabia basically is the #1 terrorist sponsor supporting state there is in the Middle East, just like that of Turkey, who have sponsored all of the different thugs that are working inside of Syria to overthrow the president of Syria, President Bashar al-Assad. And not only that, we also know that Saudi Arabia has been very busy with Yemenite civilians there. Of course, we know they're also fighting against the military, but unfortunately the civilians are the ones that take the heaviest toll in this fight, and the Yemenite have no comparison in firepower back on Saudi Arabia. But anyway, in this case here, on March 11th of 2017, lethal Saudi airstrike burns 26 Yemeni civilians to ashes in a popular market right there on the Red Sea. And then we have the other part here where President Trump will be going to Israel. And again, I have to say, I'm not here to bash President Trump on his trip that he's doing. So please understand that. Those that do love President Trump, and I do have a great appreciation for him, for his stand for Israel and Israel's right to exist. But you have to be very cautious in what we're seeing. And this is what I've noticed with his trip here. Just like I-24 News in Israel, they came out with this report here. I'm going to share with you briefly what the report says here. I want you to listen closely, and then I'm going to stop it, and we're going to look at a couple of issues here. All right, listen to this.
Welcome back. President Trump and his team heading to Riyadh for the first stop of his first foreign trip. The stakes are high, the expectations here in the Middle East even higher. And after Saudi Arabia, he heads to Israel and the West Bank. The ultimate goal, peace that has eluded American presidents since the 70s. And for this White House, mixed messages and communications have become sort of a staple. That seems to be the case even in the itinerary for Israel and the West Bank. Going into this visit, the White House publishing a text and video guide of the trip. In it, they cite his meeting with Mahmoud Abbas and his visit to Bethlehem, a city in the West Bank, as part of his visit to Israel, while at the same time showing a map of Israel without the Golan Heights or the West Bank.
Now, that's the part right there I want you to pay attention to there. Now, let me just back up just a moment here. President Trump will meet with the president of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, in Bethlehem, and will urge Palestinian leaders to take productive steps toward peace. The president will also visit the Church of the Holy Sepulchre and the Western Wall. Now, some of you may be aware of that he has actually said that he is not intending on going to either one of these places, and including the Western Wall, with any Israeli representatives. Listen to what the news broadcast says, and we're going to jump back to these issues.
While at the same time showing a map of Israel without the Golan Heights or the West Bank. Those kind of mixed messages don't tend to go over too well in this part of the world. And of course, earlier this week, another sort of issue with McMaster coming out and saying no Israeli leaders will join President Trump at the Western Wall. Then yesterday, President Trump telling a local paper, well, maybe it still might happen. Let's bring in back Major.
All right, so we're looking at several issues, and these are things, as the reporter here with I-24, which is the English language Israeli news, is speaking here. This is very sensitive things for the Israeli people, things that a lot of people don't really pay that much attention to. But for the President of the United States, who has been a strong supporter of Israel from before he was elected president in his campaign trail, and since he has become president, he has shown very strong support for the Israeli government and for the people of Israel, to suddenly make his first trip to Israel and go to the Wailing Wall and not have Israeli representatives there, that is a major issue. A major issue, because the whole idea that they're dividing Israel to begin with and that they've redrawn the lines, which we already know this to be true. We know this based on the Oslo Accord, the agreement there where they were going to redivide the city and East Jerusalem would go over to the Palestinians. Of course, in 1947, Resolution 181 was making Jerusalem an international city to begin with, which would totally put the Jewish people out of Jerusalem altogether. Now, President Trump has been very much for Jerusalem being the capital of Israel, but if you'll notice, he's also in support of the Palestinians having East Jerusalem. So basically now it looks like that maybe the Resolution 181 may get scrapped. I don't know if that's really going to be the case or not, because you have to remember, according to Siman Tov, what we shared with you here on Israeli News Live with the interview that Yana Ben-Nun did with him, we saw that according to the testimony that he gave, the very aide for Ariel Sharon during a meeting with them back years ago had signed a two-state deal with different heads of nations, including that of the United States, in an undocumented event. This was done so, and of course a two-state solution was signed, and the surrender of the sovereignty of Jerusalem was also taken away from the Jewish people in line with Resolution 181 of the United Nations Accord there. Now, I bring this up because now we're looking at the fact that going to the Wailing Wall, not having an Israeli representative there, is also a direct sign that the Western Wall will not be part of Israel. And of course, according to the new lines, and let me just kind of share that with you real quick. We'll come back to this in just one moment here. Let's drop over here real quick to Google Maps here. I want you to be able to see this for yourself. When you're looking at Jerusalem now, Jerusalem is completely no longer part of, we no longer have Jerusalem. They completely redrawn the lines. Now, if you'll notice there, look at those dotted lines on the map and behind you there. This here, get my bearings straight, this is Highway 1 that comes up from the airport coming all the way up here into Jerusalem here. And if you'll notice, the dotted lines of the West Bank there. The West Bank now crosses Highway 1. Right here is where they have that eco bridge there, and that's where they begin to use it as a checkpoint when I was in Israel only a few weeks back. All right, so why does the West Bank cross Highway 1? And then, of course, Jerusalem is shrunk down as well. And I'm going to kind of zoom in on that as well for you, too, to see this. Now, all of this here, this is West Jerusalem, this is East Jerusalem right here. All the Western Wall, all the Old City, everything is now in the Palestinian territory. It's inside the West Bank there. So you have to ask yourself the question, what is going on? The very neighborhood that I lived in as well, Givat Hamivitat, right here near French Hill. French Hill is to the right side of the road, and to the left side is Givat Hamivitat. That is now part of the West Bank. This is very serious, friends. Very serious what's going on. So when the reporter here is speaking about that, that the map also has been redrawn, and she says the Golan Heights, and we'll just blow this back up for you on your screen so you can see this. Exactly. The Golan Heights is nowhere there. We see nothing on the Golan Heights. Of course, the West Bank, you kind of expect the West Bank not to be on the map. Even though we consider this Judea and Samaria as a Jewish people, they say that you can see that the Jerusalem is cut in half. And it does seem to be that way, but it's a little bit harder to tell with this type of a map. But when it comes to the cutting off of the Golan, it is clear that the map that was made by Washington, that has been since removed from their website, that it did cut off the Golan Heights. Now, those of you that watch Israeli News Live know that we reported on this a couple of years ago. One of our friends that happens to be from Israel, her husband, and their family owned a restaurant there in Galilee. And at one time there was a Catholic priest that had stopped by. There were always Catholic priests stopping by at their restaurant. She says because Their restaurant was in a building that was shared by the Catholic Church. And the Catholic priest told her one day, and we shared this with you here on Israeli News Live, that the Golan Heights will end up being given to the Palestinians as part of their own future state. And I remember this sister telling me she could not even have fathomed that to even be true. But as we also noted, as a second witness, and we've said this as well here on Israeli News Live before, when I was up living in the Golan Heights for a very brief period, we were there when my family wanted to try to live in Israel, we were in the Golan Heights for about a month. And staying there in a guest house of one particular man that worked for the United Nations, he asked me later when we were leaving, he said, "Steve, are you coming back? Are you going to stay in Israel, or are you going to stay here in the Golan?" And that really blew me away. And I wanted to know what he meant by that. What's the difference between Israel and the Golan? Well, you see, the thing is he even already knew as well that the Golan was going to the Palestinian people. And no one has ever seemed to believe that until now, that I can prove to you that that is definitely what the plan is. It is to divide Jerusalem. They're definitely going back to the pre-1967 borders. And that's including everything that happens in Jerusalem. That is including up inside the Golan Heights there. As you can see here, this is where the Golan is, but the map that the U.S. is showing cuts it completely off. Things are changing, friends. Now, let's go into some other issues as well. The Vatican fully recognizes a Palestinian state. Pope Francis says Israel will disappear from the landscape of geography. Landmark treaty enters into force. Now, this is what the Pope of Rome even said. All right, this was covered by Global Research, .ca and .org. This was back on August 30th, 2016. Give you more of the article right here. The Holy See and the State of Palestine have notified each other that procedural requirements for its the agreements enter into force have been fulfilled under the terms of Article 30 of the same agreement. Israel will disappear from the landscape of geography, the Holy See said in a statement on Saturday. Israel, let me read it again. Israel will disappear from the landscape of geography. Official Vatican statement. No wonder then why Mahmoud Abbas, in this video I'm going to share with you here in just a second, we won't allow the Jews' filthy feet. We bless every drop of blood that has been spilled for Jerusalem, blood spilled for Allah. Every martyr will reach paradise, and every one wounded will be rewarded by Allah. Of course, I believe it's 70 virgins, which kind of makes you wonder, what happens to the girls that are martyred? Do they get 70 virgins as well? Really messed up theology, that's for sure. Let's play a little bit of the clip here of what Abbas has to say. We won't allow Jews with their filthy feet to defy. Excuse me. We bless you, the Merabitan, those carrying out Rabat religious conflict, war to protect. We bless every drop of blood that has been spilled for Jerusalem, which is clean and pure blood. All right. I want you to see what he says. Blood spilled for Allah, Allah willing. Every martyr will reach paradise. Every one wounded will be rewarded by Allah. The Al-Aqsa Mosque is ours. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre is ours. And they have no right to defile them with their filthy feet. That's President of the PLO, Mahmoud Abbas. So the Holy Sepulchre is theirs as well, right? And then we get this new news that just comes out on the 19th, yesterday. Trump faces a higher authority, Pope Francis. So Trump faces a higher authority. Yahoo News is reporting Pope Francis. That's his new higher authority. Historically, the relationship between American presidents and pontiffs is a complicated one, but seldom has a first meeting been as awkward as the upcoming one between Donald Trump and Pope Francis. When Trump sits down with the spiritual leader of America's 50+ million Catholics next Wednesday, he will be face to face with perhaps the only person with a bigger global megaphone than his own. There will be a little common ground between them. Trump spared sparred with the Pope Francis on the campaign trail, and the pontiff has been critical of the president on issues ranging from climate change to immigration to refugee resettlement. Story continued below, okay? Now the point is, remember what they said to Trump during his inauguration dinner, where Hillary Clinton came there and they were good old buddies. Of course, they are cousins, by the way. It was told to President Trump then. They had already talked to the Pope, and the president knew what he had to do to make things right. So I guess he is going to his higher authority. You know, I would love to see President Trump really stand up and be a man. But I think the deep state is starting to sink their teeth in. He's fighting for his life. He's fighting for America. I agree with you on that. But the deep state that wants to do wars all over the world and conquer it, which they're also conquering it for this man right here as well. Don't think they're not. They are. But isn't it interesting the way the meetings will go? In Riyadh, Israel, Rome, then he meets the Belgian president in Germany, or Belgium I believe it is. Then back down there to the G7 summit. Get all the proper instructions and then go down to the G7 and then he knows what he's supposed to do from there. I don't know if President Trump was surprised when he got into office or not. Maybe like Jesse Ventura, shocked. Maybe not. I don't know. You know, it says to pray for the leaders, your leaders of your land. I think now's a good time. Also, Russia, according to Sputnik News, Moscow slams U.S. strike on Syria pro-government forces, calls it an illegitimate strike, that they had no right to do it. I watched where one of the colonels, I believe it was speaking about this. He claims that they warned the Syrian government that their forces were coming, not to come near this area. And of course, what it is, they're already claiming to have set up a safe zone where they're operating inside of Syrian territory, but yet without permission of the Syrian government. So it is a shame that the United States has struck pro-Syrian forces, and they say they were doing it in self-defense. I think what the Syrian forces were probably doing is just to see whether or not they had a right to go in any place in their own country with supposedly a nation that is there to combat ISIS. But you have to remember, the United States is also arming and protecting the pro-Syrian rebels to overthrow Assad's government to begin with. So certainly they're going to strike back. The pro-Syrian forces should have known better. Another issue as well going on right now, the USS Carl Vinson and USS Ronald Reagan are in Western Pacific, but they are not in close proximity of each other, the Pacific Fleet said in a statement. In fact, when I saw this picture here you see on your screen here with the aircraft carrier, the USS Ronald Reagan, I know it's a foul photo, but I could not help. Is this not a loaded deck or what? I mean, just slap full of fighter planes, bombers, you name it. But anyway, the article says that the U.S. Navy confirmed Friday that 2 of its aircraft carriers are operating in the Western Pacific region, unrelenting tensions on the Korean Peninsula over the North's provocation. The USS Ronald Reagan and its carrier air wing featuring fighter jets earlier warning aircraft began its spring patrol earlier this week, according to the Pacific Fleet. So it's still not over, guys. It's still not over what's going on over there with North Korea, and I have a feeling that that's going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. That's what I believe will be the flashpoint that ignites a third world war, when and if that were to come to pass. Syria, I don't think Syria would actually cause it. North Korea is what I believe will cause it. We're doing a special 2-part series that will be airing on television in the United States starting in about 2 weeks from now. We'll be updating you very soon in the very near future about the broadcasts that we are doing there. We still are actively looking for business owners that would like to support the broadcast there by advertising for Israeli News Live on satellite television in the United States. So if you happen to be a business would like to do that, we certainly encourage you to contact us. Let us know. We'll put our email address in the description box below. And as well, we encourage those of you of our listeners that like to support Israeli News Live, the work that we're doing to bring to you the truest and most honest news that we can bring to you from around the world. Don't forget, we will be trying to catch President Trump during his visit throughout not just the Middle East, but mainly we'll be trying to catch up with him and other world leaders while they're here in Europe. If you would like to help sponsor that, or just support that type of mission, please do. We do need your help continually to bring the things that we bring to you here at Israeli News Live. I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live, Erev Tov.